In the 17th century, a scholar with a disfigured eye walked alone across a collapsing empire, carrying notebooks instead of weapons. He had failed the most important exam of his life again and again. Yet centuries later, revolutionaries would call him one of the sharpest minds China ever produced. His name was Gu Yanwu, and his story begins not with triumph, but with repeated failure. To understand Gu Yanwu, you have to understand the world crumbling around him. He was born in 1613 in Jiangnan, the cultured heartland of the Ming dynasty, a region of canals, rice paddies, and scholar families who had held status for generations. But the Ming dynasty itself was rotting from within, and within decades it would collapse entirely under invasion. Gu's entire life would be shaped by that collapse. Gu was born Gu Jishan in the village of Qiandun, south of Kunshan, into a family that had been wealthy scholar officials since around 1524. But his path was unusual from the start. His father's paternal uncle had lost his only son at age 18, leaving no heir. So, as an infant, Gu Jishan was given away, adopted to fill that void in another branch of the family. His adoptive mother was a woman named Wang, who had been betrothed to the son who died, and who chose to remain unmarried and live in seclusion with his family rather than remarry. She became the boy's guardian and teacher. Gu had almost no contact with his birth parents and rarely mentioned them in his later writings. It was Wang who first taught him, using the writings of the Song philosopher Zhu Xi. Childhood was not gentle to Gu. At age 3 he contracted smallpox, which permanently disfigured one of his eyes, a mark he would carry for life. Despite this, he entered a local school at 7, immersing himself in the Confucian 4 books and philosophical texts like the Huainanzi. His adoptive grandfather, Gu Xiaofei, pushed him even further, insisting he study the great histories of China. At just 11 years old, Gu was handed the massive Song dynasty chronicle Zizhi Tongjian. His grandfather told him something striking. Understanding 100 chapters written by Ming authors was worth less than understanding a single chapter from the Song era. That single lesson planted a seed. Gu would spend his life valuing original sources over second-hand interpretation, a philosophy that would define his entire scholarly career. Despite his grandfather's disdain for the exam system, family pressure eventually pushed young Gu toward it, in hopes he'd earn rank and a government stipend. In 1626, he passed an exam at Suzhou and became a shengyuan, a student scholar. Around this same time, he reportedly joined the Fuxia, a literary movement devoted to reviving the philosophy and writing style of ancient China. His future, it seemed, was set on a traditional path. But that traditional path quickly turned into a decade of frustration. Gu's biological father died in 1626, forcing him into mourning and out of the next round of exams. Then bureaucratic chaos struck again in 1628, when an examiner fell ill mid-grading and results were never released. In 1630, he passed preliminary rounds but failed the triennial examination in Nanjing needed to reach the higher rank of jurin. Through the 1630s, Gu kept trying and kept falling short. He often scored the highest marks in the routine annual exams that confirmed his student status, proving he had talent. But when it came to the triennial exams that could actually elevate his rank, he consistently landed at the bottom or failed outright. By 1641, after repeated disappointment, Gu finally abandoned the examination system entirely. Just a few years after Gu walked away from the exam system, the world he knew ended completely. Qing forces from the north conquered the Ming dynasty, toppling the imperial order Gu's entire education had been built around. For a scholar family rooted in Ming tradition for over a century, this wasn't just political upheaval, it was an identity crisis. Gu, like many of his generation, had to decide who he was now. Gu's answer was to become a Ming loyalist, and he made that stand personal. He changed his own name from Jiang to Yanwu, meaning warlike and blazing, a defiant declaration against the new Qing order. Yet when the remnants of the Ming court offered him a political position in their rump state, he refused it. Loyalty, for Gu, did not mean joining a doomed government. It meant something else entirely. Instead of politics, Gu chose the road. Likely financed by his family's landholdings back in Kunshan, he became an itinerant scholar, traveling across vast stretches of China. He wasn't sightseeing, he was collecting, gathering notes, observations, and records on everything from geography to statecraft wherever he went. For decades, the man who had failed to climb the empire's official ladder built something else instead. An enormous, first-hand archive of knowledge. All that traveling and note-taking eventually became the Rizulu, or Record of Daily Knowledge, the work Gu is most remembered for. It wasn't a single argument but an edited collection of notes on statecraft and historiography, built up piece by piece over years. In it, Gu criticized Neo-Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism, refusing to simply accept inherited philosophical traditions without scrutiny. It was scholarship built from the ground up, not handed down from authority. Gu's critiques went beyond religion and philosophy, striking directly at how China was governed. He argued against political centralization and heavy reliance on rigid law codes, believing this approach actually weakened central authority by handing real power to clerks and mid-level officials. It was a counterintuitive argument that tightening control from the top could hollow out power from within. This kind of clear-eyed structural analysis set him apart from scholars of his era. At the core of Gu's method was a simple but radical idea: go back to primary sources. He advocated for historical study grounded in original documents and first-hand evidence, rather than relying on later commentary or accepted wisdom passed down through generations. This empirical instinct, the same one his grandfather instilled in him as a child reading the Zizhi Tongjian, became the backbone of his entire scholarly philosophy and his lasting legacy. For all his prolific writing, remarkably little of it saw print while Gu was alive. Only 2 of his works were published during his lifetime: the first edition of the Rizulu and his phonology treatise, the Inshua Wushu, or 5 books on phonology. Everything else, his poetry, geographical surveys, and countless notes, remained unpublished manuscripts, scattered and vulnerable, as Gu continued his wandering existence across China. Gu Yanwu died in 1682, leaving behind a mountain of unpublished work and only one devoted disciple, a scholar named Pan Lei. It was Pan Lei who took on the task of publishing the rest of Gu's surviving writings after his death, ensuring his teacher's ideas didn't vanish with him. Even so, many of Gu's works were ultimately lost to time, a reminder of how fragile scholarly legacies could be. Despite the fragility of his surviving archive, Gu's influence rippled through the entire Qing dynasty that followed. Scholars in the 19th century, like He Shaoji, venerated him so deeply that they built a temple in his honor in Beijing. A man who never held office, who failed exam after exam, and who died with most of his life's work unpublished, had become a figure worshipped in stone and incense. Gu Yanwu's story didn't end with the Qing dynasty either. Centuries later, reform-minded revolutionaries like Liang Qichao praised his work, celebrating his empirical rigor and his defiant resistance to Qing rule. A scholar who once wandered China alone, failing exam after exam, became a symbol invoked by people fighting to reshape the nation itself. If you found this hidden history compelling, subscribe for more forgotten figures who quietly changed the course of history.